This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Is the AFC North actually good? And the reason I bring that up is because it seems like every year we hype up the AFC North. We're 100% sure that the AFC North is going to be great. And we can only see how all four of these teams are going to be the most dominant teams in all of football just for the season to happen. And maybe one of the teams are good. So what I wanted to do today is go through all of the teams in the AFC North and talk about why they could be great, why they could be bad. We're going to start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think the Pittsburgh Steelers case here for being bad and being good is obvious. The case for them being bad is that Kenny Pickett is not actually good, right? Now, a lot of hype has been put on Kenny Pickett's shoulders. A lot of people are excited about Kenny Pickett. And it's really off the strength of maybe 3 or 4 games at the end of the season. And it wasn't like the evidence that Kenny Pickett would be a good quarterback was overwhelming. I think it was more or less, it hit us at the right time. It was the right kind of stuff. And the narrative felt good for a lot of people to go off of. But if we zoomed out and looked at his whole body of work during his rookie year, it's a lot more shaky than what you would perceive it to be if you just heard people talk about Kenny Pickett, right? And if this team is not going to be good at quarterback, where are they going to be good offensively? Because they're not the most impressive running game in the NFL. Najee Harris has not been an elite NFL running back like he was drafted to be. The wide receiving core for this team is not great. It's okay, but it's not great, right? Deontay Johnson's okay. George Pickens is pretty good for the limited role that he runs on that team. And then they have a guy like Freiermuth who's pretty good. So it's a decent receiving core, but if the quarterback play is not good, if you have no run game, you can easily see where Pittsburgh can be in a very, very anemic offense. And this is a team that was very, very anemic last year. Then you go to the other side of the ball, and that's where Pittsburgh's a lot more solid because they have TJ Watt, right? They have Highsmith, TJ Watt, and Hayward. So, you know, that defensive line is going to be okay. Linebacker wise, they're going to be all right there. And then DB wise, they're going to be not the greatest secondary in the world, but they're not going to be a horrible secondary. So average defense plus average to above average defense, I would say, plus a very bad offense usually equals a 6 to 7 win team. Since it's the Steelers and since it's Mike Tomlin, I'm going to edge more on the side of like they find a way to win 8 or 9 games. But you can see where that team has a very obvious ceiling and a very obvious floor. I think this team is going to be what most people expect them to be. In all honesty, I think they're probably going to be somewhere between 7 and 9 wins. That's where they're going to probably land. I don't see much room for them to be any better than that. I don't see much room for them to be any worse than that, right? Their defense is going to be pretty good. Despite the fact that their offense stinks, they'll be able to move the ball a little bit just because of just off the strength of all the bodies they've added to that offensive line. So they'll have a limit. The defense will be good enough to win them a couple of games. That's kind of who the Pittsburgh Steelers are. Another team where there's not a lot of mystery about who this team's going to be, and I think this is in the exact opposite direction as the Pittsburgh Steelers, is the Cincinnati Bengals. Because it's much easier for me to see how things will go right for the Cincinnati Bengals than to see how things will not go right for the Cincinnati Bengals. For example, that offensive line, right? They added Orlando Brown Jr. They're going to probably get rid of Jonah Williams at some point. Leo Collins is going to start on that other side. They have Jackson Carman, all these other pieces to move inside around at guard. They have a decent offensive line. And I will contend that the offensive line issues for the Cincinnati Bengals have been very overrated, right? Like, yes, have they not had a great offensive line the last few years? Sure, but it really hasn't mattered because if you look at their team success, they've been able to be successful despite the fact that Joe Burrow takes a lot of sacks. And like Joe Burrow said, some of the reason that he does take a lot of hits is because he holds on to the ball longer, but that also allows him to make big plays down the field. So it's really not a sacrifice that he takes all of those hits. And again, a lot of the times we see quarterbacks get sacked a lot. We see quarterbacks get hit and we blame it on the offensive line when the quarterback's usually the one that's at fault for most of those sacks. So that's one, right? If that's the Bengals' biggest weakness, then that's not really that much of a concern for them. You look at their wide receivers, and I mean, they got some of the best wide receivers in the NFL. You look at their tight ends, and they don't really use them, so it doesn't really matter much what they have out there. They still got some decent pieces at tight end. And then you look at running back, and that's where they could be a little bit one-dimensional. Joe Mixon hasn't looked like a really good running back the last few years. They really don't have an option behind him. Maybe one of the draft picks that they got this year steps up for them, but the run game can be a little bit anemic. They might be one-dimensional, but when your one dimension is as good as the Cincinnati Bengals one dimension is, it kind of doesn't matter. And then you flip this field to the defensive side of the ball. They still have a decent defensive line. They still have really, really good young linebackers, and they still have a good enough secondary behind them to be a good team. I don't see a world where the Bengals aren't a playoff team. It would be very hard for me to imagine outside of a major injury or a grouping of major injuries that they miss the playoffs. They're going to be a playoff team. They're going to win 10 to 12 games, and they're going to be in contention for first place in this division. Now, I think the difference between first place and third place will be like one win, and there's going to be a 10-win team that could get third place here. But I think the Bengals are pretty much the favorite in this division. I think they've earned that, obviously, and I think that they're going to be in that position and poised to be in that position. So those are the two teams that we have not that much mystery about. And then you have the other two teams that are wild cards. Wild cards for multiple different reasons. Wild cards for reasons that are very similar to each other, but wild cards nonetheless. I think both the Ravens and the Browns could win the division. They could finish in last place. That's possible for both of these teams. Let's start with the Ravens. What could go right for the Ravens? The Ravens could be great this year, right? That defense was good enough to almost win them a playoff game versus the Cincinnati Bengals on the road. Like, they're one fumble from Tyler Huntley away and winning that game. That's how good that defense is. You pair that with a more functional offense, and you can say that you can get that just by having Lamar Jackson more healthy. You also pair that with a Lamar Jackson offense that has weapons. A Lamar Jackson offense is going to allow him to be a little bit more dynamic, and you can see where the ceiling is the roof for the Baltimore Ravens this year, right? You got Odell Beckham. You got Rashad Bateman. You feel like you actually got some wide receivers around Lamar Jackson. You're gonna put Lamar Jackson in a better position to throw the football. So maybe he improves even more in that area. And he's still Lamar Jackson. So if he needs to scoot, he can do those things. And then you flip it to the other side of the field, and you might have the best defense in all of football. But this is the team where I'm like, man, things can go wrong. A lot of things can go wrong for the Baltimore Ravens. What are those things? Okay, let's start with the offense. Let's start with the quarterback. While I do think it's good for Lamar that he's in a new offense, there's a real question that hasn't been questioned about if Todd Monken's offense is right for him. And I say that not because I'm skeptical of Lamar's ability to throw the football. I think he's a good thrower of the football. I just don't think this system is a fit for his style of play. When Lamar played in college, he played in the pro style. When Lamar was with the Ravens early on in his career, he played in Greg Roman's type of offense. This is a departure from both of those styles. It's not the same. It's a massive departure in terms of what kind of protection he'll be getting, right? Browns fans who were here in 2019 know the Todd Monken system, know that you don't leave tight ends in there, know that it's going to be spread out. And also, if you follow the Todd Monken system, you know that sometimes interception jumps happen with that system because it's a lot of throwing the ball up in the air. If there's been one area as a passer I can be seriously critical of Lamar Jackson, is that when he has to throw the ball deep downfield, he's very hit or miss. A lot of his worst mistakes as a passer are when he has to stretch the field deep down the field. Now, a lot of his best highlights are that too, but when he makes the egregious mistakes, the big misfires, the big misthrows, the big misreads, they're usually deep downfield. This is an offense that's putting him in position, in my opinion, to his weakness as a passer. Not like his weakness because he's throwing, but his weakness as a passer. I don't think he's the strongest passer in the areas that this offense is asking him to succeed in. So, yes, there's a world where this offense opens up things and you get the ball to Odell Beckham and you spread it out and it's going to be great. But there's also a world where you put Lamar Jackson in a position to get worse because he's going to be running less. So the floor is not there for him. You're asking him to throw, which is fine, but you're asking him to throw in situations that he's not good at, which could end up with issues. And then let's talk about those weapons. Because yes, Odell Beckham sounds great on paper. Missed the whole year last year. We have no idea what kind of player he's going to be. Yes, Rashad Bateman sounds great on paper, but he's been hurt. Hasn't really been able to make a mark. It's kind of been a problem with the Ravens. Injuries have been an issue with them. Ronnie Stanley sounds great on paper. He's not the same player he was before the injury. He's not bad, but he's not the same player. I can see a world where these things can go wrong for the Ravens, and they're in a situation to where that offense has no counterpunch, has no adjustments, and they kind of just stink. And if that offense starts to stink, that's going to bleed into the defense, and then the team that should win 10, 11 games might just win 9 or 8. That's the worry with the Baltimore Ravens. Now let's talk about the Cleveland Browns, because the Cleveland Browns are similar. Because a lot of the Browns' hopes rely on Deshaun Watson. Now, if Deshaun Watson is great, Browns have nothing to worry about. They will be in contention for first place. They will be a 10 to 12 win team, and they will be one of the talked about teams in the NFL. If Deshaun Watson is not good, they got a world of trouble, right? This is a team and a roster, and you can say this out of any team in the AFC North. The Browns are the most committed to winning right now. You can also say out of any team in the AFC North, the Browns are the team that's won the least consistently. So you see the issue that they're in. They spent a lot of money. They spent a lot of resources to be in this position to be successful without a lot of success, without honestly the least success in the division. So if they're not successful this year, things are going to have to change, because how many years can you do this? So Browns are in that situation. Offensively, all of this should work on paper, right? Because we're not asking anybody to do anything new, or at least the Cleveland Browns are. Offensive line, we've seen them be good in the NFL. Deshaun Watson, we've seen him be good in the NFL. Nick Chubb, we've seen him be good in the NFL. Amari Cooper, we've seen him be good in the NFL. Point. You could do this with literally everybody on the Browns. We've seen them all be good in the NFL. The question is, will it all mesh together? Because as talented as this team is right now, they were that talented last year. They won 7 games. Will things go right? Will things bounce the right way for them? Fortune, honestly, plays a factor with the Cleveland Browns, and you have to ask yourself, is this a team that's going to have good fortune? Because that's the only thing really standing in their way. Roster-wise, they're good. Player-wise, they're good. Coaching-wise, I mean, you have a coach of the year on offense. You have Jim Schwartz, a really respected defensive coach, on the other side of that. And then you have Bubba Ventrone, one of the most respected special teams coaches on here. Coaching shouldn't get in your way. The GM shouldn't get in your way. The roster shouldn't get in your way. The only thing that can get in the way of the Cleveland Browns is bad fortune. And the fact that we haven't seen them do it together. A lot of this is on Deshaun Watson. If Deshaun Watson's good, everything's going to be all good with this team. If Deshaun Watson's not good, then people are going to be panicking. But that's the Browns' fate. I think it's more likely that the Browns live up to their potential than the Ravens. I really have concerns about the moving parts on that Ravens offense. Defensively, they're fine, but the moving parts on that offense are very concerning to me. And I think not enough people are talking about that to the point to where it's overlooked. And I think that even adds to the issue. So if I had to predict this this division, and this is very early right now, I would say Bengals will finish in first, Browns will finish in second, the Ravens will finish in third. Well, no, let me scratch that. The Steelers will finish in third, and the Ravens are going to finish in last. That's a possibility of happening. I think, honestly, no matter what, the Steelers are going to finish in third, and the Bengals are going to finish in first. Maybe the Browns can finish in first. Maybe the Ravens can finish in first. But whichever team between the Browns and the Ravens don't finish in second place will be in last. I do believe that. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. That's my thoughts on the AFC North. Y'all have a great day.